It was a beautiful spring day a few years ago in sunny St. George, Utah, and I came this close to missing an opportunity. There was a festival in town, and my husband had a booth at the festival, and one of my daughters, Sophia, needed to perform with her dance team, and she needed to be there early. So I brought the rest of the kids with me, and Sophia met with her dance team, and then we had this window of time where we got to go to this big field where it was covered with bouncy houses. So we got to this area, and I bought a bunch of tickets and I distributed them among my children. I have several of them, and the older ones went off together to go and have fun. And I turned to my youngest, Dove, who was 7 at the time, and I said, "Where do you want to go?" Well, right away, Dove pointed across the field and said, "I want to go there." She was pointing to something that I'm going to call the bungee bounce lane. And if you can picture two inflatable lanes with an inflatable barrier in between them, and when it's your child's turn, they get to hop up on the lane with the bouncy assistant who will take them to the end of the lane where there's a bungee cord attached to this wide Velcro strap that they strap around their waist. And then the bouncy assistant hops off, and it's your child's opportunity to run as far and as fast and as hard as they can until, of course, the bungee cord wins and it pulls them back, falling and bouncing all the way. So it sounds like a blast, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, Dove had done this the year before and she loved it. So she was super excited about it. I was less excited because I remembered the line as being torturously slow. But it wasn't about me, it was about Dove. So I said, sure, let's go do the bungee bounce lane. So we went and we stood in line, and it didn't take me long to realize that it was just as I had remembered. It was going very slowly, and we had some place to be. And so I figured that it would be smart for me to start timing how long it was going to take the kids going through the line so that I could know if we were going to be at my daughter's performance on time. So I timed 1 kid and 2 kids because there were 2 lanes, and there was 1 bouncy assistant, and I counted everybody in line in front of us, and I'm sure I probably missed something in this math story problem, but I did my best, and I figured that we had enough time, but not a lot of wiggle room. So I decided I was going to try to negotiate. So I turned to Dove and I said, "This line is moving pretty slowly. If we go and do something else, we can probably do like 3 other things in the time that would just take us to do this one thing." And she responded right away, "No, I'm okay, you know, let's do this one." But I wasn't done yet. I'm like, there's a princess castle and an obstacle course, and they even have this slide where they spray you with water as you go down the slide. And Dove looked around for a minute, and then she turned back to me and said, "No, it's okay if I only do this one thing. This is what I want to do." Well, I semi-resigned myself to waiting in line. And as we waited and waited, the line actually got longer in front of us because these 2 kids came around and cut in front of us. And you know how lines are not always a straight line? Sometimes they get kind of like a blob shape. Well, I decided, you know, I thought it was clear that we were in line, but I figured I would take advantage of this blob shape and I would just like maneuver my way around the side and then, you know, scoot in front of these kids and bring my daughter with me, and we would reclaim our rightful place in line. So we did that, and all was well in the world. Until these 2 kids came around us again and cut in front of us again. And I looked off to the side and I saw their parents standing there watching them. And I'm thinking, what kind of parent just stands by and watches their kids cut in line twice? So as you can tell, I was miserable, and I was creating this misery for myself. And it wasn't long after this that Dove turned to me and said, "Why don't we play I Spy?" And of course, as soon as she said this, I wanted to do like a mental face palm or something, because I had been a counselor for a few years at this point. I had been through an 8-month mindfulness training course, and I had taught the mindfulness principles of being in the present moment with awareness and acceptance to many of my clients and to my family. And here I was in this present moment, just resisting everything about the experience. So of course I turned to Dove and I said, that sounds like a great idea. So we began to play I Spy, and it completely changed my experience. It went from this experience of being miserable, waiting in this torturously slow line, to having fun with my daughter, playing a game together. This story is, in this moment in my life, is really a small moment, but our lives are really made up of small moments, and the weight of these small moments combined shape who we are. And I want to talk about some of the things that I was struggling with in this situation, because I'm not the only one who gets distracted, who gets focused on the wrong thing. And in my defense, we did need to be to my daughter's performance on time, right? But there was this other goal that I had of spending time with my daughter, who was right there with me, that I was missing. I got caught up in linear thinking and wanting to have control over my situation. And neither of those things are bad. It's important for us to feel like we have power and control over our situation. And linear thinking is actually extremely helpful. And we do it when we set goals. If I know exactly what I want, if I know what Z looks like, and I'm at A, and I can figure out all the steps that lead from A to Z, I can identify what I need to do in order to get to my end goal. That gives me power. That helps me to know what's next. It creates predictability and structure, and it feels safe, and it's amazing. But sometimes our lives are kind of like this line that I was standing in. They're not exactly linear. It's more like a blob shape. Sometimes things happen that we don't account for, things that are unexpected. Sometimes things happen that are outside of our control. There might be another person involved who has their own autonomy. In this experience, Dove chose to do this one thing. She didn't want to do those other things. And in reality, if you think about it, I mean, I didn't have a goal of standing in as many lines as possible. I just wanted to be there for Dove. And so it was a little silly, you know, when I thought about it afterwards. So sometimes these obstacles or challenges that show up in our lives are actually opportunities in disguise. Sometimes there are opportunities that exist between point A and point B that we aren't aware of, and they show up as challenges. And if we can take advantage of those and accept them, then we can make the most of those experiences. Another thing that I was struggling with is resistance. As I said, I was creating this misery for myself. And instead of accepting this situation, I had this time to wait in line, and I was fighting that experience. I was trying to change it. And sometimes we create our own misery by trying to control things, and we make things worse. Sometimes we also have this fear that if we have too much acceptance, we will become a doormat. We might lose some of our motivation or our ambition because we are accepting everything, right? I'm fine, life is wonderful, so I don't need to try harder, I don't need to improve myself or work towards something different. But I think in reality, the problem is not too much acceptance. I think the problem is too little acceptance. And I want to explain what I mean by that. Of course, it's really important that we include awareness along with the acceptance, because I need to be aware of everything that I am bringing to this situation. I need to be aware of my mindset, my attitudes, beliefs, my values, and my goals. And I need to, so along with that awareness, I need to accept that that's going to have an effect on my situation, and it's going to have an effect on those around me as well. I need to be accepting that other people have their autonomy. I need to be accepting that there are some things that are outside of my control, accepting of real and perceived limitations. And I also need to accept the potential consequences or outcomes of my choices, my actions, or my failure to act. Now, I want to acknowledge that there was another option for me in this situation that I didn't choose, and that was I could have gone up to someone else in line and said, look, this line is moving kind of slow and I've got to be to my daughter's performance at this certain time. Would it be okay if we got in front of you? Now, of course, I'd have to accept they had their own autonomy. They could have said, lady, I was here first, there's no way. But I'm guessing that in this situation, they probably would have said, yes, sure, it's no big deal. This was a small moment with my daughters, and probably both of them will have forgotten it, except that I keep talking about it. But it wasn't insignificant. I talked about getting from A to Z and all of the little steps in between, and really my end goal, my Z, is to have good relationships with my family members. And so even though this was a little experience for me and my youngest daughter, it was a significant experience and one that adds to all those other little experiences that I have with her over time. And those experiences combined together create that relationship that I want with her. It's an interesting relationship, this awareness and acceptance, and how that creates flexibility, a flexible mindset where we can adapt to those unpredictable things that come up in our lives, and also increases our power and our accountability. In one of the earlier Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man's uncle tells him that with great power comes great responsibility. And the flip side is true as well, that with great responsibility comes great power, because if I have responsibility over these things right here, then I have power to affect change and to do something about those things. So acceptance and awareness can help us create that flexibility. They can help us to be more adaptive. They can help us have more power and be more effective in reaching our goals and remembering those things that matter most to us as we come back to the present and embrace all of that that's in our experience. And as we do that, those small moments can become significant. Thank you.